Welcome to Rare But Real, where we discuss what it takes to be a woman of God in these challenging days. And now, please welcome your host, Audrey Brogy.
Hey, I'm glad to be back recording, and I'm so glad that I have one of my girls with me today. And this podcast is basically going to be a life update with Maureen. In fact, that's what you're going to see as the title when this episode drops. And here's the thing, Maureen. People ask me often they always ask me how my family is doing, but sometimes they specifically, I should say more than sometimes, specifically ask me how you're doing. And so I want to hear the life update, and I know people who follow me will want to hear from you. And I know that at this stage of your life, there's so many life changes for you as your children are growing up. I remember what that was like because now your children are at the age that you and Jordan were when y'all were teenagers, and all the things that were going on in our lives. So I think about that often. So there's lots of things I'm going to ask you and that we're going to talk about today, but you get started. Share some of that. How are you doing? How's everything going at this particular stage and life stage of your life?
Well, hi, everyone. It's good to be back. And in terms of a life update, not a lot has changed in my life since I was last on here. Like, I think it was in May, maybe, when we did I talked about how I'd fallen and
that's right.
Stuff with MS, but there's not really anything new on the MS front with me. I'm just continuing I wouldn't say I've declined more this year. Things have become harder as it became 2025. But that has not changed since May. I would say I'm still in I can still drive and get where I need to be. I'm just slow. So I always just tell people that I can do that, but it'll be slow. And I think I've adjusted to that in a lot of ways where I become more comfortable in that. Because, every time, for anyone listening who has any kind of disability, I feel like whenever you reach a new status of disability, you have to mentally grapple with that and be okay with it in terms of not being self-conscious about it, being confident that this is just where I am, that instead of me sitting in my house and not living life, I can still do the things, but they're just at a different pace than the rest of the world. So I'm not saying that I don't at all struggle with anxiety occasionally, depending on where I'm at, if it's new. I mean, I'm very in tune to all of the surfaces I'm walking on, or at times when I'm using my wheelchair myself, I'm careful with that. But instead, that can cause some, internal anxiety of oh, what's this going to look like or be? But every time I do something new and I can do it, I do stop and thank the Lord. Thank you that I was able to do that, to get to that doctor's appointment on my own, even though the parking was tricky and I wasn't sure what it was going to be like, but I did it. And so I try a lot just to focus on what I'm still able to do versus to sit so much in the what if of what this could be like. And, sometimes, and again, there are times where I've been in a panic projecting what the future may be like disability-wise. And in those times, sitting before the Lord, crying sometimes or frustrated, God always just stills my heart and He calms me, and He's never left me. He's never forsaken me. He's always been with me. And I know, I know He is, and I believe His word. And I really do cling to that, even in those times of, that are stressful, projecting what I may or may not be able to do in the future. And then I'm also reminded, because anyone listening who knows my story and my family's, that, we had a tragic death 9 years ago. And so I'm also reminded in all of that I'm not even promised tomorrow. So why am I going to sit and wonder what 20 years is going to look like when I may be in heaven in 20 years? I mean, I balance I don't want to be morbid in my thought of okay, family, today could be our last day. We could all, die in a car crash. So
but it's reality. I mean,
right. It is reality. So it's like I want to balance for myself and for my kids that we don't need to live in fear of that whatever God has planned, we can always remember in Psalm 139 that God has ordained our days perfectly ordained ever before there was one. And so while an end of life on earth is always sad, and it is more tragic or more hard or difficult depending on ages, stages, and what's going on in the family dynamic, but knowing that God is sovereign and that we can rest in that. And I really do believe him. And then so that had to transfer over to me having this debilitating disease that I have to trust him daily. It's a faith walk. I always go back to 2 Corinthians 5:7, for we walk by faith and not by sight. Because it's when I'm walking by sight that I get really anxious or scared or sad or frustrated, because when I just look at the here and now, things can look bleak and scary. But when I focus on heaven, thinking about Colossians 3, setting my mind on the things above and fixing my heart and mind on that just calms me. And God's presence and believing his word, taking him at his word, and seeing so many times where he has come through for me personally and for our family. And not because he owes us anything. I'm also always gripped with that. Like, God doesn't owe me healing here on earth. He doesn't owe me, a long life here on earth. But, he owes me nothing. In fact, I deserve death, as we all do. Romans tells us that. But God has given us grace. And so he does have me here. He has me alive and breathing and doing well in so many other areas. But then there's some that are a real struggle. And, the other thing I would say is, I hear regularly from people that say to me, and they literally will just say, Maureen, like, I'm actually thankful for your disability because I feel like you're able to speak into things in a different light. And I probably wouldn't listen to you otherwise. And while I know those words are meant to be an encouragement and comforting, there are real times where that's like in my head, I'm thinking, well, I mean, I wish you could find someone else who had an ailment that you could, gain from. But then seriously taking the comment as like, this is what God has me for right now. And God is using this hard in my life to bless others or to encourage them or to challenge them, because I'll meet people that have other things wrong with them and they've decided just to give up on life, essentially. Right. They're not ending their life, but they're just not leaving the four walls of their home because it's hard. And so there are so many lessons to learn practically, and I don't do it perfectly by any means. I mean, there are days that, it feels like I just want to stay in bed, although I never stay in bed. And people always, that's just a side note, because I have people all the time ask me, whether it was after Jane died or with this, like, do you just like stay in bed all the time sad? And I actually don't. I really do not do that. And that doesn't mean that sometimes you think like, oh, I just need to go to bed and be done with this day. But I try not to do that, and not because I'm better than anyone listening. And maybe some listeners have stayed in bed all day, and that's okay, as long as you don't stay in bed forever.
Forever, yes.
Like have your, I mean, there are hard days. There are times where you just can't participate in something. And there are times where I've told my children, like, I can be at these events, but I cannot be at this. For X, Y, and Z reason. And then I'm always reminded by another mom who's able-bodied, and she's like, I can't even be at all these events. Like, there are just times that humanly we can't make everything happen. So I think sometimes the hardest thing for me in this stage of mothering is that I always think if I can't do something, that I'm the only parent who can't do something. That every parent is at every single thing all the time. And no one ever has to call upon a friend to bring their child home from an event. But then I talk to moms who are like, I do that all the time because I have multiple kids and I can't be in two places at once. So I think, like, I know I need to be better at giving myself grace in that some of this stuff is not because I'm disabled. It's just a reality. Like, we're humans and we need help.
That's right.
Like, and if we have more than one, or even if you only have one child, sometimes because of certain things, you cannot make something. And that is okay. So I think on more of a lighter level, I just am learning how to just realize it's okay. There are plenty of things that I do, and I try to not miss out on the major events. But if I can't make something, I'm becoming better at being okay with just saying, I know I can't do that. That's not a situation I can do.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big learning thing for me. It's just, these are my limits and I know those. And maybe there will be times where God lifts those limitations for me and then I can do more things because my mind is still sharp and I want to do all the things. So my mind isn't following my slow body. My mind is in 100 places at once and thinking about what I would be doing if I could.
Yeah.
But I don't want to be in that spot where I'm always wishing for something different versus for the here and now.
That's right.
Because even in the hard, there's so much that if I just kind of shoot it away, I don't want to miss what God has for that. For me, for my family, or for others who are watching and learning and going through things themselves.
Yeah.
So that's kind of nothing in particular new with MS. My days, things can be hard physically.
Yeah.
But by God's grace, I keep doing the next thing.
You keep
and that's
pressing
all I
on.
can really do right now. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Maureen, I was thinking too, there's people who have been listening and know about your what's gone on in your life with your MS diagnosis, and they know about Jane and they're aware of those things, but there's so many new listeners to the podcast now. And I want to encourage you, if you're wondering a little bit about why, even when I called it a life update with Maureen is married to my son, Jordan. I've known her since she was a young girl. 9 years old is when that's how I remember you, at 9 years old. And then she and my son started talking, and anyway, they ended up, they're married. And so I've known her for a long time. And if you want to hear more, those of you, especially those who are new to this podcast, you can go back to the episodes because we have covered that. You can go to some of the first ones when I did a series with each of my girls in terms of, not every single one of them, but the ones who were willing to share their story and wanted to, you know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah. And you can hear about that. And then you can hear, because I did other podcasts with Maureen in terms of her MS diagnosis and the challenges that came along with that and what's still happening. And we did a couple of episodes on losing Jane, where you can hear more of that. And there's also, and I'll put these things in the show notes. I've done this before, but I'm saying this again because Maureen, we're just getting a lot of new listeners who don't know you, and
right.
Yeah, and then the when Church of the Apostles, the church that you are members of, Dr. Michael Youssef is your pastor, and they did a video about y'all's life and your walk of faith through these very hard, challenging days that God ordained for you, and even listening to the one that we did previously when you talked about the challenges when you fell in your kitchen and because you said so many good things that I know have been very encouraging to women who were listening at the time, but we have so many new ones since then, just in terms of, the simple, it's a simple but profound. And you said, I've just learned it's not good for Maureen to be able to do this. It's not good when you think about,
right.
The kindness and the goodness of God. And I've heard from women who have said that so many things that you shared and have shared have opened their eyes to being grateful and knowing that they could receive a diagnosis the next day, because as you said at the beginning, none of us, God doesn't owe us anything. We're not promised anything. And that's why we live fully in the moment that we're in, and we walk with him and we look forward to his return. But while we are here, like the Apostle Paul, we let him use our lives to the full fullness while we are here. And so for those of you who are new and thinking, well, what are they talking about? Go back, scroll on all the old podcasts, and I say old, they're all fresh, but so you can learn more of that story, and I'll try to put those in the show notes. Now, Maureen, they got married young, and they had their children, basically right away, 5 children, and then. And so you were, as all of us, when we first have our children, we're inundated with the baby and toddler years and figuring things out and meeting the needs of our children. But now all of your children are in double digits. We know Jane's with the Lord, but she would be in double digits if she were here. So what's been the biggest adjustments or challenges? And I know one time you said, now I have drivers, so kids can drive, and run errands for you. I remember when Jeremy got his license and then Jordan not long behind, it was like, oh, I'll go to the grocery store for you because they wanted to drive, or I'll pick up that for you. So what's that been like, now that you have all your kids in double digits and they all have their, their friends and their social life and their, their time with the Lord, and even Luke and Jack too, but being at the age where they're like, we want to go see Emma and Granddaddy, and they just come. Right. So talk to that a little bit.
Yeah, and I think, and I'm actually, in 1 week from today, my third, or my first girl will drive herself to school, which she's so excited about.
Yep.
And I'm excited too because the boys continue to be great helpers and help me out. All of my children are. Mm-hmm. But I feel like my girls will be more excited and get little runs, little errands. They'll be like, I understand it. And so I feel like I'm about to have a brand new driver again. Mm-hmm. So going through that phase of it's 7:30 and you're trying to make something and you don't have something, and she'll be the volunteer. They'll be like, I'll go and get it. We'll just see. That's always fun. So it's fun to see them. But the biggest thing I would say this semester, which I've mentioned on a podcast before, I feel like I live my lives in semesters because that's how my kids live their lives.
Yeah.
So the fall semester of 25, I feel like the hardest thing for me that I'm working through, I'll continually be doing it as a mom, is just, it's like a season of letting go. And, and I really realized that probably about a month ago when I was talking with Jack on the phone. He was a sophomore in college. So we were talking on the phone and he was just saying some things to me, and they weren't bad things. It was just different. Me as a mom, I would have been like, I probably wouldn't do that. I'd probably do this instead. And Jack reminding me I appreciate that advice and I respect that advice, but I think I am going to do it this way.
Yeah.
And just I remember we hung up the phone that day and wow, it wasn't sad or anything. It was more just he's an adult. I am not his mommy in the same way anymore.
It's we decrease. We decrease.
Right. And so it is and I remember thinking I told Jordan actually within a day or two, I was like, I think the hardest part of mothering for me so far is actually this letting go phase. Mm-hmm. And, then my second, Luke, is applying to college and he'll be gone after the summer, wherever he ends up. And then Claire's a sophomore and she'll be driving. And I feel like once you can drive, you're just gone more. Mm-hmm. And we're excited about that. We're excited for them to have friends and to be involved in things. And plus, sometimes it's just fun when you're young to go somewhere at night and go to Chick-fil-A, even though you just ate dinner. So we want, we love that, and it's fun and it's exciting. Or they don't need me to pick them up as much anymore. Right. But that stuff for me is just I know it's good and I want it to be that way, but it's still hard.
Oh, of course it is.
I just coined it my season of letting go.
Yeah. And
it's going to go on for quite some time.
That's right. That's right.
Where it's just learning to shift from, and not with especially not with my girls yet, but I would say with Jack and then now with Luke, who's a senior, Jordan, my husband and I have definitely, with our kids, we've never put up on a bulletin board, when you are a senior, you have full freedom and you can do whatever you want. Because it's not that, but it is like we are kind of letting them in a lot of ways dictate their schedule and more just come to us, not necessarily, hey, can I go to Waffle House tomorrow night at 7? And it kind of shifts into, I think I would like to do this. Like, I'm just checking to see, will that work with the family? So we've been okay. And I remember when that was happening with Jack, when Jordan was like helping me with like, you know, he's in 6 months from now, he can do whatever he wants, whenever he wants. It's better to have a gradual freedom versus one day, you know, you're at home and can do nothing, and the next day you can do whatever you want.
Right.
So my point in saying all that is that was harder for me with our first. And now it's just, you know, I feel like with Luke, it is more of like we check in with each other. Like I kind of let him know what's going on with the family calendar, and then he kind of lets me know what he's thinking, what he thinks he would when he's working or has a heavy study night or what he would like to do. And so doing that, you know, is also a letting go. Because, you know, maybe sometimes they'd be like, oh, that'd be like so nice if we could all just sit around the table for 3 hours and eat and have dessert and play cards. It's like, but that's just not a season that we're in like weekly anymore. And I mean, we do still try to eat dinner together as much as we can, but even that dynamic changes when they're driving and they have jobs.
That's right.
And we want them to have jobs. Like we think that's great and have a responsibility and to be able to manage their schedule with multiple things going on at the same time, because that's the life they're entering into. So they have to know how to do that. But I've realized for me, that's really hard. And I think the root of it is just I like having them all near and like being together. I don't think I have some like bad motive underneath that. But
wait, what'd you say? What'd you say the last thing?
I don't think I have some like secret motive of like why letting go is hard for me. I don't really wish they would stay.
It's normal though. It's so normal. Maureen, I mean,
it's new, you know, everything new. And I tell the kids that I'm like, everything new is hard. Like
it is,
you know, it is. It's hard until you get adjusted. And there's not really, sometimes I wish there was like a playbook for something.
I know.
Like, you know, after like 6 weeks, this will then be like this, like a medical procedure where they tell you, expect this, then this, but there's not. And I think it's going to be different for different seasons and depending on where my kids go to college but I'm learning with that, like, again, being reminded, not like a death, because them leaving home is nothing like them dying. But in that, like, with losing Jane, that was like a permanent letting go on this earth, like, no more. And with the other 4, it's just
little by little.
Little by little, you're letting go. And you're more waiting for them to call upon you to ask your advice versus just calling it and giving unsolicited advice that you actually wish they would obey.
Right.
And then maybe you're mad if they don't. So I'm learning all of that. And if Jack listens to this, he'll probably laugh. He's like, yeah, she is learning that.
Well, you know, it's interesting because as you say that, because here I am in my late 60s, I'm 67, and Jordan, you know, he's almost 42. And I was thinking, you know, how he came Friday when he reached, I'm like feeling the emotion when he reached out and said, hey, I'm going to be at USC on Friday and I want to come spend the night with you and Dad on Friday night, and then asked me about going to the game on Saturday. And I'm just saying that at my stage of life, I'm like, I can't even tell you how happy I was about that. And then, you know, he came and I was like, we have Jordan all to ourselves. And I love it as I say that. Now he probably don't listen to the podcast. If he does, he's like, Mom, don't. I've probably embarrassed my kids my whole life, but lay that aside. I'm just saying as a mom, those tender feelings that you have about your children and the way you love them and the way you care about them and the way you love time with them, it doesn't go away. But at the same time, you want them to be exactly where they are, and you want them, it's very few and far between when anything like that happens. But when it does happen, it fills your tank in a way that you can't even describe. Just their physical presence, and you don't expect it. You don't, but I'm just saying it just does something. And so you at your stage of life, seeing it because your children are all blossoming now in terms of, launching and leaving and establishing their own lives. And in that, our hearts rejoice like crazy. But we're still moms. We're still moms, and we still love them in that tender way that moms do. And that doesn't go away, or at least it hasn't in my experience,
Right. I know. And so, again, it's just another area to give to the Lord. And
that's right.
God already knew it was going to happen. And, it's okay to miss your kids. And
yes.
You probably should. I think would say you should miss your kids when they're gone. But I don't know. Yeah, that's for me, like, really this fall is just like, it's not, my little chicks aren't still in the nest, and I'm calling all the shots. And and it's good, but it's different and it's hard. And I feel like because we had our kids kind of like in rapid succession,
cluster children
all happening so like fast.
Yeah.
It's like a little blip,
that's
happening.
Right. That's right.
But, then there's like so many things that the Lord wills that they all end up married with kids, and that'll be like a little squish season where they're all kind of doing the same thing at once. So she'll be so like fulfilling and rich if that's what God has for our family.
Right.
So I'm just, daily, I trust the way Jordan and I raised our kids, and it wasn't perfect. There are definitely things that we missed or paid too much attention to versus not.
I know.
Lord willing, it was not anything major and life shaping to them. But, even as your kids grow, like different issues, everything becomes their own. Like they're out on their own for the first time. They don't have the padding of coming home to mom and dad. They're searching for a new church on their own, which, and I'm not talking about they're finding a church that's theologically sound, but it may be different from what you're used to.
Sure.
But in knowing like that's not bad.
Right.
And they're having to figure this out on their own. And so you want to like champion that, even though maybe inside sometimes you wish that things were, you could just be like exactly how it had always been.
Sure.
But it's like, as you see them maturing and growing, it's like, no, this is good that they're wrestling with this, that they're asking these questions, that they're wondering, should they go here or there? Should I be a part of this or not? And why? All these things are good and they're great for their development and growth. And again, I'm talking about in the realm of, I'm not talking about like a heretical place where
Sure.
I'm talking about kids who are believers and love the Lord, but their lives aren't going to be exactly like mine and Jordan because they're not us. And us learning to like fully be okay with that. I think Jordan is fully okay with that. I'm the one that's flagging. So, all that, it's not bad. It's just a part of the process.
That's right.
I'm always surprised by all the different things that are a part of them becoming adults that I never really thought of before, of the impacts of it, whether great or small. And so, no, it's great. I wouldn't trade being their mom for anything in the world. And even in the days that are harder than others, when you're not really sure how to help them, or you're not really sure what to say or when to say or not to say, like, I still wouldn't wish any of it away because it's a part of refining each of us.
That's right.
I'm also, having to shed off things that I thought would be, or the way I think things would be, and saying, and the Lord's telling me, no, like, this is how I have it for these children. It's not your call. So, I'm just, and I always come back, and especially in light of, you referenced before we went on to this area with my kids and the stage of life, when we were talking about MS, you kind of ended it with telling, saying how some of the women have said they've been encouraged by hearing my story and not taking like for granted little abilities that they have, because at any point they could be gone. But I think about the verse in Psalm 84:11, and the last part of it says, "No good thing does the Lord withhold from those who walk blamelessly." And I think always just coming back to that, like God's not withholding. If your life, no, we're not perfect here on earth, but if you are walking with the Lord, filled with the Spirit, confessing sin and repenting of it as it comes to mind, or you know you're guilty of it, you are walking blamelessly before the Lord. And God's not withholding things from you, like he's like a puppet master dangling things or taking things away. It's like he knows exactly what my life needs and your life and all the lives of our children. And so for us to try not to interfere with that, but rather watch that unfold, is really a gift. It's not always an easy path to walk down, but it is very rewarding when you really can grasp that maybe that seems really great for someone else, but God doesn't have that for me. And I need to be okay with that and comfortable with that. And I think that's true for all of motherhood, quite honestly, at any stage, knowing maybe that family next door looks like their life is way better than mine. But why are we even saying that? And no, it's not. Your life, if you're walking with the Lord, is exactly how he has it for a reason.
It's like
so
my portion.
That. Yeah, like all the things. And I just encourage all the moms that to keep on raising your kids and pouring into them spiritually and giving them God's word. And, because that never returns void. Sometimes our words are wrong or fall flat, but God's don't. So let him be your ultimate. He should be, the ultimate authority in each of our lives. But to really live in that and walk in that, knowing that he has it, even when we feel like we don't.
Right. I love that. Maureen is so much. It's just such good wisdom there. Okay, I'm going to end the podcast there today. And it's been so good to catch up with Maureen and hear about all that God is doing in her life. And next week, we will continue the conversation as we talk about friendships and even how she teaches and guides her children through making friends, keeping friends, and what to look for in friends. So I hope you'll join us again. Father, we love you, we trust you, and I pray that you use today's episode and next week's to encourage the hearts of all the women who listen. In Jesus' name, amen.
If you enjoyed this episode of Rare But Real, be sure to subscribe so you'll be notified when a new episode is posted. And share this podcast with friends. Follow Audrey on Instagram and Facebook at Mothering from the Heart. And listen to all her messages on the Search the Scriptures app.